A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, and welcome to the end of, where are we, January. Welcome to the end of January. It's almost February. We're already about 10% of the way through 2023. And if you're most people, you're finally over the weekend able to buy yourself one or two of those bottles of wine you would normally buy, because January, in the aftermath of the wild spending of Christmas and New Year, is usually a very long month, and it feels like it lasts for weeks and weeks and weeks, and the salary doesn't. And so the end of January can be a really difficult time. Can you afford a bottle of wine? If so, what can you afford? And if you don't have much budget left at the end of the month, but you would like a glass of wine, what can you get that's not going to burn the roof of your mouth or tear your throat out or just really not deliver the kind of quality that you want? And so that led to this show. You might remember we did something similar about a year ago. Tuani Price joined us, the chef Pete Goff Wood, Duncan Savage. Well, today we've got a really cool selection of people, and I put exactly the same challenge to them as I did to Tuani, to Pete, and to Duncan a year ago, and that was head out to your local bottle store or supermarket, wherever it may be, armed with 200 Rand, and you have to buy yourself a bottle of red and a bottle of wine. Now, for some people, yeah, you could probably get a case of wine for that. There is plenty of South African wine that sits in that 40 to 60 Rand mark or thereabouts, and a lot of it can be perfectly pleasant, and it's stuff that a lot of people enjoy as their midweek or everyday drinking wine. But it's a slightly different story when you have got one of the bad boy rock stars of global winemaking, who generally sells his wine for what most of us would put down for the deposit on a medium-sized property. And then you've got two world-class sommeliers, one who serves up wine at a restaurant with a fabulous wine list, but one that comes at a price, and another who, every time I look at him on social media, he's in a different country dishing out fine wine to new audiences. So these are people who are used to spending vast amounts of money on wine or serving wine in that space. How will they cope with only 200 Rand to spend on a bottle of wine which, and this is my directive to all three of them, will dazzle me? So in just a few minutes' time, Katlego Mathobela, who we've seen plenty of on Dan Really Likes Wine, who effortlessly shimmies around the floor at Saints, serving up some really cool and interesting wine. Spencer Fondaumiere, he's the chair of the South African Sommeliers Association, and they are doing some wonderful work. I love watching what Spencer and his team are doing for the wine industry. And then Chris Alheit, who you might know, somebody whose cousin once went to school with somebody who lived next door to the vet of the guy whose dog used to stay over in a kennel with Chris Alheit's cousin. And that's as close as you ever got to the man, because trying to find a bottle, let alone a case of his wine, is almost impossible. It disappears the moment it's ready. And that's because he makes some of the finest wine in South Africa. So they are my three rock stars for today, a star-studded list to take on my wine challenge. But before we see just how well they've done with their 200 Rand and their bottles of wine, let's have a quick look at some wine news. Well, let's start with this Uwamere. Every time they send me one of these, I want to jump on a plane from Johannesburg and shoot down to the top of the Helderberg Valley. They have got such a beautiful spot to Uwamere. It's terrific for wine tasting alone. I think their Chardonnay is as good as it gets out of Stellenbosch. But if you put it in the context of that setting, you've got somewhere, as they say, quite dramatic, even by the high standards of South African wineland. So if you're interested in the Uwamere Summer Sunset Sessions, a quick Google search will take you through to Uwamere's website. They'll have some more information on exactly what they entail, but needless to say, competing for headline status will be those views along with the wine of Uwamere. So head over to their website and that'll be waiting for you. And it is one that I highly recommend, as I do next Monday. Now, if you are at a loose end, do come and join me. This is my other show, the Dan Nicholl Show, and it's our Dan Nicholl Show Invitational in partnership with Bright Rock, raising money for the Laureus Sport for Good Foundation. We will be playing with a whole heap of celebrities. If you want to play golf with Maps Mapanyane or Jason Goliath or Dean Elgar or Chris Morris or Brian Mitchell or Mark Williams or Stiga Fredericks or all sorts of Bafana players, Springboks, Proteas, Olympians. We've got a couple of singers and movie stars coming along as well, I think. We do a lucky draw on the day, so everybody gets a celebrity in their team. It's lots of fun. There's plenty of good food and wine, a lovely auction at the end of the day, and all the money raised there goes to the Laureus Sport for Good Foundation. So if you're a wine-loving golfer and you're in Johannesburg next Monday, last couple of spots are available, and you can just get hold of us on Dan Really Likes Wine or through Royal Johannesburg, and we'd love to have you join us and raise some money for the Laureus Sport for Good Foundation. Now, this is something I was up to last week in Cape Town. The man on the left in that Richie Benno-like jacket is Pierre Val. For 20 years, he was the winemaker at Rakes, making only Pinotage and Chenin, and the Pinotage to such a level that he's now known very affectionately as the Pope of Pinotage. And if you'd like to see what he's making now, you'll need to jump from Rakes over to Survivor, where wine from all over the Western Cape pockets, from Elgin for his Sauvignon Blanc. I think he's got some Pinotage coming out of Trudeau, I think. The Chardonnay from Trudeau. He's got wine from all over the winelands. He's a member of the Cape Winemakers Guild 2016 Diners Club Winemaker of the Year, a man with a real gift, a real love for wine, and enjoying a new adventure after 2 decades at Rakes. And you can see more of that coming up in the next few weeks in a longer interview I did with Pierre to have a look at his latest journey and the wine accompanying it. Now, my journey also took me out to Stellenbosch and Le Chant. Does Stellenbosch really need another wine bar? They've got hundreds of them. Well, in this case, I will say yes, not just because it's a lovely building and particularly charming late afternoon, early evening, as you can see from the picture, but it is dishing up the wines of Le Chant, the latest from the Odo Empire, alongside of Thai-Bosch and Pink Valley. A wonderful team inside, very warm welcome. We had a couple of pre-dinner glasses before heading off to a lovely meal at Post and Pepper. Yes, there are plenty of wine bars, but this one is a worthwhile addition, and it reaffirms Stellenbosch's status as the wine bar capital of the world, as far as I'm concerned. So add that one to your list next time you're in downtown Stellenbosch. A little later on in the week, we went through to join Winnie Bowman and her team in Cape Town. On the right is the Consul General of Italy to Cape Town. In the middle, Giorgio Nava. That is 95 on Chiron. It's Carne. It's 95 at Parks. And a selection of other Italian restaurants. And amongst 7 esteemed chefs who, for their properties, were given the nod by the latest Gambero Rosso-backed Italian fine wine and food guide. There was a special nod for Giorgio for also having an outstanding Italian wine list. We tasted a lot of that wine last week, and again, it'll be coming up soon on Dan Really Likes Wine, the Italian Wine Showcase, returning after 6 years to Cape Town, and a very happy return it was. And then this is brand new on the restaurant scene. This is Upper Union on Upper Union in the heart of Cape Town. Balmy, warm evenings, big open style, felt a bit kind of Cuban, Miami, having a small plate feast. Some really good wine. Had some of Jenny Povel's Albarino from Botanica, which was exceptional, and a really nice glass of Merlot as well. Just a great spot to hang out. Some really good food and perfect for summer as Cape Town continues to stay alive and beating fast for the next few months. Make the most of it before that winter starts to set in. And I think this is the last of them. The Dirty Little Secret, Ken Forrester. He's guaranteed to have more than one. In fact, he's definitely got 4, because on the right, that's the latest iteration of his Dirty Little Secret. It's not something I think that has been done before in South Africa. It's taking your concept of a non-vintage champagne, blending from different vintages and spinning them together. But in this case, swapping champagne for Chenin Blanc and some of the best of it. And what you get is a really rich, layered, textured Chenin Blanc. It is shamelessly aristocratic. It's definitely not an inexpensive wine, but it speaks to the best of different vintages coming together in a glorious, chest-thumping, velvet cloak-wearing triumph of a wine. So Dirty Little Secret number 4, I think it's only just out. If you can get your hands on it, it's a lovely way of showcasing Chenin Blanc, Ken's signature, but in a slightly different manner to that done in South Africa before. So that's your selection of wine and food news, and they do go together, as will our food and wine later on this evening. I've got a tasting I'm doing a little later on tonight for some guests, and I might use some of the wine suggestions from this evening, depending on how good they are, and I think they might be, because even though our three guests only had 200 rand to spend, they are three of the sharpest minds in South African wine. So warm welcome to Katlego Mathobela, head sommelier at Saint in Johannesburg. Welcome to Mr. Chris Alheit, who is, I think, getting his harvest underway, which, as with most star winemakers, he does no work for whatsoever. He just watches everybody else while he sees all the wine come in. And Spencer Fondaumiere, who is the chair of the South African Sommeliers Association and does such a wonderful job. There, guys, lovely to have you. I am so excited to see what wine you've chosen, but I'm going to hold off from asking you because, first of all, I just want to set the scene here as to how difficult this was. Because, Kat, if I start with you, every time I come to Saint, you very carefully offer me a bottle of wine. I then drink it. I don't have to leave one of my kidneys behind to cover it because it's always fantastic wine, but it's at the top end of the spectrum. This is the kind of wine you're used to dealing with. How difficult, how much fun was it going to explore an area of wine that on a day-to-day basis you don't see quite so often?
Oh my God, it was frustrating, honestly. And thank you for having me on the show. So I went to two of my local supermarkets. I went to check out some Spar, and I didn't realize how snobbish I am when it comes to buying wine. I ran around in circles for almost 30 minutes trying to figure out what is interesting enough, not too common, but also exciting. And I think I have some good options for you, Dan.
And we're going to find out what they are, starting with the white in just a moment. Talk to me a bit about perception of wine as you see it at Saint Cat, because you get people coming in. This is not just an outstanding Italian style restaurant, very modern style that David Higgs has put together so successfully. But it's also one of the coolest places to hang out in Joburg. This is where black coffee goes to have a drink, let alone DJ. You see that kind of clientele. It's the kind of clientele we often perceive as people who like to be seen to be buying the expensive stuff. What kind of wine shifts at Saint? What are people looking for? And how much is price influencing them, and in what way?
Honestly, you should know Saint is a lifestyle restaurant, so we see all kinds of people, from celebrities to your normal Jane Does. I would say in terms of wine, honestly, it's more on the higher spectrums. We have our corporates that come through between Mondays to Thursday. Then it's a liquor joy from Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Then it's all jazzy and old school hip hop and R&B towards Sunday. But honestly, it's money, money, money. So everyone comes to Saint to show off how much they make, how much they can spend, and what fancy Lamborghinis or Ferraris they drive. So we see all kinds of people, and it keeps it interesting because you never really know who's walking into the door and if they're gonna whip up an ace or perhaps just a normal Normandiano Cabernet Merlot blend, which is good value for money. So it's fun and a surprise every time.
Of course, Katlego mentions the Lamborghinis. That's just the sommeliers arriving, so you can imagine what the guests are driving when they get there. What about, just a last question on perception, is there, when people are looking for that high-end wine, that if I order this, I know I'm going to look really good? In the past, it almost automatically would have meant a bottle of French champagne, possibly for those people who are more fine wine oriented, a good bottle of French wine that people will notice. Are South Africans now seeing that kind of value and perceived value in a great limited edition bottle of Cap Classique or a really good and rare Sadi or Alheit or Malinu? Is there that element to I'm shopping for wine so people can see I'm drinking something pretty cool?
Honestly, yes. They are drinking a lot more South African wines than before, honestly. So I think post-lockdown, in travel within South Africa increased, which meant drinking more of our local stuff since importing was near to impossible at that time. And it got them to be more appreciative of what our land has to give. So honestly, I would say in terms of our lovely gems that we do have at Saint currently, we are talking the Waterford, the gem is moving quite swiftly, the Ethan and Filion, the Sardis Palladius. We have actually the Overmira, the single tree Chardonnay, which is doing it quite beautifully at the moment. And when it comes to local MCCs, currently a Genevieve is doing well, a lovely lady. Black Elephant is doing lovely. Lulut, you can never go wrong with them. Let me think. And mostly, funny enough, our white blends are starting to pick up pace, which before was a really tough sell. So they're drinking more Roussan blends, they're drinking a bit more Chenin Blanc based blends, your Malinois, your Stockondays, Nativo is a nice small winery. So they are exploring a bit more, and it makes me happy because it's hard to hunt for them and get the clientele to actually appreciate what is not always, commercial is the word. Yeah.
I love it. That's such a good sign, and such a good sign as we kick off a new year that there is that top end South African market that, yes, is possibly buying wine to be seen to be buying it as much as actually drinking it, but is recognizing the power of South African labels. So that is fantastic. And I suspect it'll be music to the ears of Chris Alheit, who makes exactly that kind of fine upper end wine. Chris Alheit, 200 Rand for 2 bottles of wine. How difficult was this for you when you went shopping earlier today? I think we've got you on mute there, Chris. Let's try Chris in a moment. All right, I think we're just getting his signal sorted out. So while we get Chris back to us, let's nip across to our chair of the Sommelier Association, Spencer. Before I ask you about how tough it was for you, how good is it for you to hear words from a top sommelier in Johannesburg in the form of Kat that South African wines in that buy to be seen to be buying kind of category are really gaining strength?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Very cool idea for the show. I think it's awesome, isn't it? I mean, like, and it's so interesting because it was not more than 4 or 5 years ago that if you wanted to be seen to be drinking something really smart, you'd have to be drinking something foreign. And I mean, the leaps and bounds that we've come in this time is fantastic. And I'm just listening to rattle off those names. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's top shelf stuff anywhere in the country. Heck, maybe anywhere in the world. Yeah, it's excellent. It's excellent strides that we have made as an industry in the last few years.
Which gives us lots of wine at that top end to be able to enjoy and to celebrate. That's not wine that you were buying today, though. I'm sure it was still very good wine, but it was not the kind of stuff that's flying off Kat's list. We won't ask you yet what you did buy, but how tricky was the process for you, Spencer?
Yeah, it's so interesting. But 200 is fair. 200 isn't too bad actually, because 200 does give you a little bit of fat on the top end. I think even that is technically higher end wine, so very cool. Not as I think it's a really interesting thing. What I got a bit tripped up doing was working in the industry, and believe me, there are not too many perks working in the wine industry. Certainly not financially, anyway. And you get very spoiled buying wine at trade prices, or not buying or not paying full price for wine. It's one of the greater advantages of knowing the people you know or being involved in the industry at any level. So you suddenly realize when you stand in front of a supermarket shelf that there's a vast difference between trade and what normal pricing is. And for that reason, very tricky, because I think when you told me about the concept, I had a wine in mind, and it turned out it was a little bit pricier on the retail shelves than what I wanted to do. But I did find a few things, very, very interesting things, actually. So quite looking forward to revealing them.
So it's given you a dose of perspective on South African wine and South African wine pricing, and clearly a valuable one. In terms of where we are now in South African wine, you're a sommelier. You work with lots of people whose job is to spread the gospel and to share the word of wine. Where do you think South Africa's focus should be? Where do we need to take it? Is it pushing more of these high-end wines, or is it understanding that there is this really big base of people for whom kind of 60 to 100 rand wine is probably where the upper limit sits?
Yeah, geez, that's a really good question. You know, over time, I think I've probably changed my answer to that question over many years and with more and more experience. And I think the great understanding is that, you know, there is a wine for everyone, and there should be a wine at every price bracket for everyone, of really good quality. And I think what's really positive, in fact, just doing this exercise was really testament to that, is that in every sort of segment now there is some really good quality wine coming up, which is really great, and I think speaks to where we need to be as an industry. You know, I don't think statistically we don't make enough wine. If enough people, if all the people we wanted to drink South African wine drank South African wine, there wouldn't be enough South African wine. That's probably the simplest way to put it, or simplest analogy to put it in. So I think it's very important then that the spread is whatever we have as the spread. There's some really good quality across the board, and I think I'm really pleased to say that absolutely that is happening. You know, and even in what you mentioned earlier, like you could buy more than one bottle of wine for 200 rand. Even in that very lower end tier, there are some more and more people trying to put a bit more focus into making really good low priced wines under $100. So yeah, definitely good strides.
All right, I really am particularly intrigued to see what our guys have chosen. I think we've got Chris back. He's busy pressing at the moment, so pretending to do some work. Chris, I like you flashed a receipt at us there. We don't want to see exactly what wine it is just yet, because that's
no, you won't.
That's a treat. But tell us how tricky this was for you.
Can you guys hear me, Dan?
Yes, got you now. Fire away.
Okay, that's great. I don't want to disappoint you, but to be honest, it wasn't tricky at all. It was quite a quick process and executed in about 7 or 8 minutes, I think.
We have this perception. Somebody like yourself, top winemaker, wine very difficult to get hold of. You make a relatively modest amount, and it's all snapped up very quickly. So we'd imagine you're just kind of swapping high-end South African wines for first growths and the like. But what's the reality to the Chris Alheit wine consumption habit?
Well, I think it might surprise some listeners to learn that I don't really drink that often wine, and well, when I say that often, I mean no more than 3 or 4 times a day. And then no, I don't really drink that often, Dan. But when I do like to drink quite nice wine. And you've actually hit the nail on the head. Usually, it is a wine swap with another producer, because I don't. I'm trying to look after my old liver, so I don't use up my liver points too much on wine that I don't find intriguing, So I'm trying to educate myself when I drink wine. I try to use it as an opportunity to educate myself. I think that's maybe a bit of a peculiar answer for your question, but that's it. But the thing is, it was easy for me to choose these wines. Because I've got a reasonably good handle on the industry and what's happening and what it actually takes to make wine at a low price, the economies of scale that you need to get the price down, and who's capable of doing that while maintaining quality. So I found it relatively easy. Sorry.
All right. Well, we'll see a little later exactly what those wines were. Before we have the first of our great reveals, give us a sense from a winemaker's perspective of the challenge of pricing, because people like yourself, like like Ibn Sadi, like Christian Andrea Molyneux, like Duncan Savage, you could probably double the price of your wine tomorrow and still sell it out in an instant. But you don't, and I think you do that amongst the reasons, because I'd like to think you're a good, big-hearted sort who wants more South Africans to be able to drink their wine. But how do you work that balance between having something that's clearly in high demand and could take a higher price if you wanted, while still making it what I think you feel is accessible to those people who've supported you over the many years?
Yeah, that's a difficult balancing act, and there's no clear recipe for it. It's a bit of a combination of gut feeling and also just trying to stay within good operating margins. With our type of business, making a little bit of wine, and frankly, anything less than about 100,000 bottles is a little bit of wine, and the economies of scale are not really in your favor. So the direct costs and the overheads per bottle can get very, very high, especially with detail-oriented work. It can pile up very quickly, and then there's also the other side of the coin is that you're asking a professional fee for your product, so you better be doing a professional job. You better be doing your very best work if you're going to ask a serious amount of money for a bottle of wine. Those are the things you have to consider. But the bottom line is we need to keep things within a healthy operating margin, or else we don't have a business. And then with wines like Magnetic North and Hailkrantz, etc., Fire by Night, where we don't have a lot of that wine, the supply and demand equation comes into play. So where the
I think we might have just lost the last second or two, but I think what Chris was saying is that anybody can message him if they'd like a trade price watching Dan Really Likes Wine, and he'll happily put that out. Let's find, I can't take this anymore. Let's find some of these wines. Let's go back to Kat and kick off. And we're going to do the whites first with all three of our guests. So Kat, head honcho at Saint, used to dealing with wine in thousands and thousands of rand. What was, after your half an hour of soul searching, the white wine that you finally settled on?
Okay, so I found wait, here we go. I found the Vergenoegd Rana Dark Sauvignon, the 2020. Where am I going? And this just came at 90 rand. And I can't wait to taste it. So yeah, that's what I found as a white, and it was interesting and very ecological and how they make their wines in the whole Runner Duck sequence of things. It's really cool to me and very biodynamic. So I went with Vergenoegd.
All right, the green-minded Katlego Mathobela. The runner ducks refer to the ducks on the Vergenoegd property who eat up all the pests and the snails and the nasty stuff. Well, you've chosen, though, I'm interested in the varietal as much as anything else, because I often think if I'm choosing a lower priced white wine, do I want to choose a Sauvignon Blanc because my worry is this might be quite acidic, it might be quite green, I might be on Rennies for the next month. Was that a worry of yours?
Honestly, it's super hot today. And second reason is I never drink Sauvignon. So I was like, you know what? Let's just buy something you never buy yourself, and the weather agrees. So yeah, we'll see.
All right, definitely weather up in Johannesburg, certainly, and it was in Cape Town last week for Sauvignon Blanc. Drunk really cool, to the extent that you maybe do lose a little of the fruit because you're just looking for something refreshing. As a sommelier, what am I eating with this? What generally, what would you suggest people pair with Sauvignon Blanc? And is there something off the Saint menu that might go really nicely with this particular bottle?
Personal favorite, my easiest way to go, because it's my favorite, is seafood. So probably like a teriyaki or octopus salad, perhaps. Arancini balls with stuffed mozzarella would do lovely with this. And probably just a nicely pan-seared chicken fillets will do nicely with some halloumi cheese. Nothing too heavy, in my opinion.
All right, they've all got a little bit of richness. That acid of the Sauvignon Blanc will catch your eye to me. And at 90 rand, ecologically friendly, a cool story. And from the estate that houses not one but two of Bertus Besson's restaurants, off to a pretty good start. You've set the bar at 90 rand. When we come back to you, you've got 110 rand worth of red wine to give us. But let's go back to Chris now with the first of two wines. Mr. Alheit, the man behind the Magnetic North and so many other modern classics. What have you got for the white wine and what did it cost you?
Dan, my white wine has cost me 102 rands, and I think it's quite a predictable choice. I haven't perhaps wowed you, but I'm just a fan of the producer and of the area, obviously. The good old Secretaries Shannon 2022.
It's a staggeringly good value wine, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I just love the Swartland, and the claim on the back label that Artie and company have made here is that it is bush vines, it is granite soils. As far as I understand, it's made largely in partnership with a big Swartland seller. As a type of a negotiant label, but I mean, I've had quite a lot of this in my life, and it pretty much never lets you down, especially for the price. It's a very good drop, and I've just tried some a minute ago. It's delicious. It's really nice.
That's a very commonly drunk wine amongst a lot of my friends as they combine value with a love of Shannon, and as arguably South Africa's signature grape. It's nice to see something so good coming in at such a good price. From a winemaker's perspective, not dissimilar to the question I just asked Kat about Sauvignon Blanc, looking at a cheaper wine, worried about the possible acid, the greenness of it. Is there a white wine which is a little easier to manage than others at a lower price point?
Dan, sorry, the press and the pump have just gone off at the same time. Could you repeat that question?
Sure. I wanted to know from a winemaker's perspective, having just asked Kat if she was worried about a Sauvignon Blanc and the possible acid or the green of it, from a winemaker's perspective, is there a white wine that you feel you can get away with a bit more at a more entry-level wine?
Get away with a bit more of?
Is it a bit more forgiving at a lower price point? Is there a certain grape
Shannon
will probably deliver? Shannon, or is it another one?
Well, I think Shannon is extremely forgiving at a lower price point because it can produce very good wines at relatively high yields. That's not always that well appreciated. The other grape that can produce quite good wines at high yields is Chardonnay, actually, and that's been quite well illustrated. In some of the, I think there was an unoaked, high-yielding, like 20 ton a hectare Chardonnay from Robertson that did extremely well in the Old Mutual contest a few years ago. Chardonnay can produce the goods at high yields. So in order to make inexpensive wine, you need reasonably good yields, or you need low farming costs per hectare so that you can get relatively modest tonnage prices so that you can have a relatively inexpensive wine. And so you need to have a grape that can perform at low yields. Sauvignon Blanc can do it. But you're quite right that you can get relatively acidic Sauvignon Blancs, if they overcrop. But, Shannon's quite forgiving, so is Chardonnay.
I've seen most of the social media posts, the Instagram posts. I know normally the life of Chris Alheit is a blur of lobster and caviar and fine dining. What are you pairing ideally with your low-budget, high-quality bottle of Arie Badenhorst's Chenin Blanc?
Well, for me personally, I would pair this with the braai smoke that happens before I put the meat on. So I would just be standing in the braai smoke, drinking this bottle of wine. I think Arie would probably pair this with some salted bokoms and a Stuyvesant Red, if I had to guess. I think that would be his preferred pairing. Yeah.
I can picture it with exactly that. And make sure it's a Stuyvesant Red. The smoke will pick out the notes in that Shannon just perfectly. All right, we've got two wonderful white wines so far. Let's head over to number 3. And there's a little bit of pressure here when you're the chair of the South African Sommelier Association and the world is watching. A white wine to choose for half or less or just more than your 200 Rand budget. Spencer, what have you given us and why? Just on mute there, Spencer.
All right, cool. So I actually I'm gonna stumble right off the starting blocks in this one, and I was a little bit cheeky on this, and I didn't actually get a white as such. I got a rosé, which, well, it's technically not made from white grapes, but I thought it would be interesting. And at that price point, I think there is some really smart rosé you can pick up on the shelves in South Africa at retail. And going back to the earlier story I was going to say, which was I wanted to do a Grenache because I thought this in summer and hot weather and really drinking for the mood and the season you're in, I wanted to use a Grenache for red, but then found them all to be a bit more pricey than the bracket allowed. So then I found this Grenache Rosé, which was really cool. I really like Picaniers too for the story. They're really interesting. They are way out on the way to series. So it's quite an unspoiled part of the Cape, and they've got two very good stories which I really enjoyed about their wines, and which is why I sought them out. One obviously is this guy on the label, the Picaniers, who was. The story is they were the Dutch soldiers who had been dispatched to guide people through the pass, and over time they sort of became redundant because more modern forms of transport happened, and they settled there, and they were the guardians, known as the guardians of the mountain, and they've done it in such a clever way now because they were always armed with weapons, and the family that owns the farm are very traditional farmers, and so they've disarmed them and replaced their weapons with farming implements, and each label has a different one, which is really cool. So in this one he's harvesting a rose, which is obviously part of the rosé. So I thought that was pretty cool. And of course Grenache, I think Chris was talking about high yielding wines and that sort of thing. I think Grenache is going to become a more and more significant wine in the South African landscape. I think it's one that does very, very well. And there's been some really great examples of it in recent times. This rosé, an example of.
And it's a wine which is not just a real part of this time of year. Rosé bears perfectly with long, hot summer days, but it also is a grape, and it's nothing new. It's certainly been the case over the last 5 or more years that has reinvented itself quite wonderfully in those happily forgotten days of grim, sickly, sweet, Technicolor pink, Kylie Minogue pop sock types wine gone, and instead it's wine that's more restrained, it's more elegant, it feels like a more authentic bottle of wine. Is that trend on the up from a sommelier perspective? Are we seeing our South African sommeliers in better restaurants being asked for rosé and dishing out rosé of increasingly good quality in South Africa?
Yeah, 100%, and part of a global trend as well. I think even the international wine numbers will tell you that rosé is one of the categories that is on the up and up, and you can see why. Generally low alcohol, very easy to drink, light, acidic, sort of stuff you wanted, exactly as you said, on a long hot summer's day. It's refreshing, it's fruity, and it's happy, and it's pink, and I mean, how brilliant is that?
All right. Well, we'll forgive you for bending the rules slightly. When you're the chair of the South African Sommelier Association, you can pretty much do what you want. But you are going to have to come in with a really good red. Before I do that, just quickly, I might have missed it. If I did, my apologies. The price of that bottle, Spencer?
So this is just under 100, about 95 Rand off the shelf.
Okay, so you've got 105 Rand to play with. What has Spencer bought? Well, we'll find out in a moment. Let's go back to the heartbeat of Saint. Kat, you spent 90 Rand on your Vergenoeg Leuve bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, which I suspect is already a glass or two down. What have you gone with your 110 Rand or less bottle of red?
So fun to say, I came just below budget. So I got the Ken Forster Petite Pinotage 2021, proudly South African, and well, who doesn't love Kenny? So this came in at 75 Rand. Yeah, 75 Rand off the shelf. And I was very excited to see that I went just below budget, and this was very exciting for me, and it's a new for me to try. I haven't tried the Pinotage before. So I'm actually gonna pour myself a glass now. Yeah, that's what I got.
Pinotage can often give people a raised eyebrow. Cheap Pinotage will have a lot of people running for the hills, but if it is wine produced by Ken Forrester, you generally suspect it's going to be something pretty decent. How much do you see people looking at something like a Ken Forrester, knowing that if we're buying the FMC or we're buying the Gypsy or we're buying the Dirty Little Secret, we know it's really, really up there, that they're buying stuff that's further down the food chain from a particular brand based on the trust they have from the very top end of that label?
I think that's mainly why it caught my eye more, because we're more exposed to his top tier FMC, the Gypsy, your three halves, his main focuses, as we would say. And knowing Kenny, he's very particular in what he put out into the market, and with such high standard standing in his name, the king of Chenin Blanc in South Africa. Something as entry as this, and catering for people that don't make much or don't earn much, to enjoy what you can produce, which isn't too expensive for them either. It's actually very thoughtful in a sense, and it works for him that he's able to cater to more than just one market, in my opinion. So it's really exciting that he does give his focus to not just his big spenders and your sommeliers and your sophisticated palates, but also for the households that would like to try something that is a little bit more pocket conscious and affordable.
And of course, it also, as a cat infers, gives you the sense of what the wine is all about. So if you like it, you feel a bit more comfortable spending a bit more, or maybe the level or two up, depending on what the wine is. I think it's a really nice selection. So full marks to Sommelier Cat. Let's head over to Chris. You went with RD with your second. I think you said that was 102 Rand. That gives you 98 Rand worth of red wine. What on earth? In one of the modern icons of South African winemaking, pull out of his cellar at 98 Rand a bottle, Chris.
I'm gonna flash this evidence again that I spent exactly $200. There it is. So it was exactly 98 Rand. That's maybe a little bit left field, Dan. I've stuck with the granite soils around the Swartland. It's actually voor Paardeberg. It's and Artie's family is involved again. I don't know what it is with the Badenhorst, but I like their project. I don't know if Artie's dad is still involved. His name's Andre. It's called Doran. Doran, this is Honor D. Oh, I'm bad at the camera. There you go. Honor D 2019. I think that was when Andre Badenhorst was still involved. I'm not sure if he's involved anymore, but it's really good. I've just tried it. It's got a lovely nose. Really nice fruit, and it's got kind of a great earthy, leathery quality and lovely tannin. I'm really impressed. Bang for buck, I think that's very good. And I guess I've got an agenda, because I'm a big Paardeberg fan. We've bought a farm there a few years ago, because I really think it is a great place. And if you look at what you can do, I mean, obviously these guys are getting good yields. I think they probably have irrigated vines if they can get those kind of yields to charge 98 Rand for a bottle like that, or at least in retail. So it's quite a bit less in trade. And it's actually really impressive value for money, I'd say.
Is there a rough guideline? Somebody arrives at a restaurant, there is a wine list, they know, right, I want to spend X amount this evening. I don't really know any of the wines. I'm not too perturbed by varietal. I just want something that I think will be pretty cool. Is there a guide towards, well, always lean to this varietal over that varietal if I'm a bit undecided?
Well, I think so personally. I think that in the Cape context, it's good to lean towards varieties that really do well in the Cape. And I mean, I get in trouble with a few other wine producers, but there are very few places in the Cape where, Merlot and Cabernet really do that well. Actually, it's a handful of spots where grapes like Syrah and Grenache in general tend to do well in a lot of places. So if you're not sure, Syrah is usually a good place to go to. And, if Grenache is usually pretty safe. So I would say lean towards grapes that, if you're looking for red, lean towards grapes that do well in the Cape. And be careful of grapes that don't do too well in our climate.
Don't drink Cabernet and Merlot, claims top South African.
Good grief.
And it's a really cool point, and I think it's one that. But for a lot of people on a show like this, where we're trying to get people into conversations where they can understand and appreciate and be more comfortable going out and wine and not be intimidated by wine lists, as is often the case for many, many people. Just having that sense of maybe a year or two older, or a grape that's naturally a bit softer, like a Grenache might be. These are wines that I'm probably, if I'm going to spend what is going to be a reasonable amount of money, this is a space where I can dip my toe into the water a little more confidently.
Yeah, something like that. I think if you're going to buy a Cabernet, stick to the proven regions. If you're going to buy a Merlot, stick to the proven regions, and there are only a handful, maybe Durbanville, maybe Elgin. But I mean, there's good Syrah from pretty much all the regions in the Cape, and there's, all the regions that are busy with Grenache, there's good stuff coming from pretty much all of them. So I mean, that's probably, I don't know, and also if value for money. The Swartland in general, obviously you've got the high-end Swartland guys, but the entry-level Swartland produces really just great value for money in general.
All right. Well, as you have shown with your completely shameless Badenhorst marketing campaign on the show today, we'll doubtless be very
a retainer. It's great.
All right, I think that's 200 rand extremely well spent there, Chris. So good on you. We've had a bar set very high by the two of you. Let's go back to our chair, who has to conjure up a bottle of red wine to match the standards set by Kat and by Chris. Chair of the South African Sommeliers Association, what's your red wine and what did it cost you?
You should have reversed it the second time round. I'll go first. Well, I was actually so I'm going to reveal it first. This is Wildeburg Wild House Pinotage. And I went with Pinotage. I was actually going to do what Butchie said and go for Shiraz because it's a relatively safe bet. And then I saw that they had a Pinotage as well. Pinotage it's important, I think it's got a reputation, sure. It's got a changing reputation, which is great, but I think it's really important from a South African perspective that we should love and embrace Pinotage because it's the one thing out there that we can truly own and say is our own. And there's been some really great examples. So I came across Wildeburg. I saw they were Wine Mag's Winery of the Year, and they did really well with a lot more of the high end stuff. So it was interesting to see they have this entry level range called the Wild House. And they're out in Franschhoek. They're fairly new. They've only been making wine since 2018. So to do as well as they're doing is really cool. They've got a really young team and stuff working out there, which is excellent. And they're making some really cracking wines. So I am very keen to try this. And I think if it's consistent with a lot of the other stuff they're doing, it's going to be very much in that new wave of less extracted and very nice food driven Pinotage that is just nice to drink.
You gave us a big thumbs up for rosé. Had a long chat as per the news at the start of the show with Pierre Val last week, talking about the Pinotage he made at Rakes, and I subsequently had some of his 888 from 2014 that was just glorious. The Pinotage world we're in now, where the murky past is largely behind us, it's offering so much to South African winemakers by way of interpretation. How much of a role is Pinotage, from where we stand today, going to have over the next few years in leading that South African wine story around the world?
Big, I think. I mean, it's an interesting one, Dan. I think when you're sitting within the boundaries of South Africa, Pinotage is a big deal. It's in a lot of places, and the vineyards, the vines are getting older, so the quality is getting better and better and better. But of course, on a global scale, it's very, very small, and relatively unheard of in many places. So, I think obviously that murky past you spoke of as well didn't didn't really help its cause. So it's a bit of a repair job on the international scene at the moment. But it's one of those things now, though, that there are literally more than 10, even 20 examples of Pinotage that are punching right up there with just, varietal aside, just really good quality wine. So, and if you had to pitch up to a fancy dinner like the one you're hosting later today, and you showed up with a Pinotage now, no one's going to be muttering under their breath, "Oh God, he bought a Pinotage." Oh, it's shocking. A lot more people be like, "Oh, that's interesting. I want to try that." So the reputation is being repaired, and with more and more people making this style of Pinotage, I think it's going to play an ever increasing role in what we do. And I think, what you mentioned in his last, when he was talking about the wines, he just now, trusting wines that do well in most places in South Africa, and that is Pinotage, as much, as well as Shiraz and other things. But Pinotage does have a great diversity across all the different parts of the Cape that wine is grown, and something to be proud of, really.
All right, some good positive words from our chair. Before we let you go and wrap up quickly with the other two, Spencer, just give us a snapshot. What does the year hold for the Sommeliers Association? What do we have to look forward to from you guys in 2023?
Yeah, thanks for the platform and opportunity to chat about it. We've got it's a big year for us. Starting next week, we have Joe Vessels representing us in the Best Sommelier in the World competition in Paris. So we're going to be up there supporting him. He did really well in the last one. He got to the semi-finals in the Best Sommelier of Europe and Africa competition. So we have very high hopes for him, and hopefully he'll do really well. And then a lot more of a continuation on the work we started doing last year with our new introductory certification, which really aims for a lot of those people we have in the industry who've never formally studied, never formally done the courses, but have the experience and the knowledge, and most importantly, the passion. So big net that we cast out if anyone wants to try and get a certification, get a pin on them for purely the passion of wine. That goes into its second year now. We had a great first year with it, over 300 people certified. So very excited for that. Later this year, we also have our Best Sommelier in South Africa competition, which will be quite cool. We're planning for this one to be the biggest one yet. And just a little bit further down the pipeline, but plans are afoot right now. We will be hosting for the first time on African soil the ASIGA, which is all the top sommeliers from all over the world come into, literally one country once every year for their AGM, and we will be hosting that in 2025. So never been done before. Really, really looking forward to putting a good show together and really just showcasing us and putting our best foot forward.
Which you will continue to do, as you've done so forcefully and so proudly for some time now. And it's a terrific institution. It's a really important part of our South African wine family. And I love seeing the work that you and your team do, Spencer. You're as passionate as you are good at what you do. And we look forward to many more great wine stories and that coming together of the international sommeliers. Particularly exciting. Also, please give Joe our best wishes, and we'll be following that very, very closely indeed. Let's find out what's in the cards for Mr. Alheit. Butch, in between producing small amounts of wine we'd all love to get, but none of us can. Anything new, different, exciting? Have you discovered a 17 square meter Chenin Blanc vineyard in a hill in Picaniers Clough that you're making half a barrel of fine Chenin from this year?
Dan, that reminds me of a story. I once asked Artie if he could help me with a little bit of Grenache, and he said, "Yeah, I've got some 300-year-old Grenache vines just down the road. You can have them." Right now, there are some new things on the horizon, but they'll only be visible in the next few years. We've planted some Pontac, which is a historic grape that I'm pretty excited about, but we don't know what it's going to do. The historical literature seems very, very promising, but you should actually check it out. There's some older articles by Joanne Gibson on wine.coza, on winemag.co.za. She wrote some great stuff on Pontac, and anyway, so we've got about a hectare of that in the ground now on our own farm, but that won't produce any wine for the next few years. Other than that, we're just really looking forward to this vintage. 2023 looks to be a very promising vintage, quality-wise. it looks like we're heading for something hopefully similar to 2017. Maybe not quite 2017, but it definitely in it, at least on that page. So yeah, that'll be really, really great. We're about 20% through right now. I suppose that's probably enough, Dan.
I'll bring it on. I'm still trying to get onto that allocation list. Maybe this is the year. I must mention Lisa Harlow dropped in a little earlier. Sorry, Lisa, I missed that. That's a great choice by Chris, referring to the secateurs, a bottle everyone should always have in their rack. And then just quickly, because I can see my power's about to go off, load shedding kicks in momentarily in my corner of Johannesburg. Cat Saint still pumping, still going wild. What's looking big at Saint? What's exciting for you in the year ahead?
We have some renovations coming up. So we are looking at some new furniture, art pieces, and just revamping the place a little bit and giving it a new shine of bright and vibrance to it a little bit. And currently, I'm just getting my 2 juniors up to speed. One is doing the level 2, one is doing the level 3. So it's mostly group studies just to get, the Saint team on the same level with everyone else, keeping the best within. And yeah, for now, that is the renovations is our biggest game we're doing right now, and just, to keep us fresh in the industry and, keeping everyone's attention.
Which you will continue to do. There are a few sommeliers I enjoy spending time with more than Kat, even if she normally costs me a fortune, but she does give me some terrific wine. Very quickly before I say goodbye, I meant to tell you guys what I had at 99 rand each, a bottle of Daria Sauvignon Blanc from Durbanville, those nice fresh Durbanville bruisers from 2021, and at the same price, the Grenache Mourvedre Syrah, some rosé instead of red, but it is summer. It's my show, I can do what I want. 99 rand as well. Out of Lamont, the Vin de Joie. Guys, my pal's about to go, so thank you all so much. Kat, I will see you at Saint very soon. Chris, I'm overdue paying you a visit to come and see if you do ever do any work. And Spencer, I know we'll be catching up soon as well. Guys, have a lovely evening. Enjoy your 200 rand worth of wine. And thanks for being part of a really cool show this evening.
Thanks, Dan. See ya.
Okay, and bye.
Katlego and Spencer together, 2 great sommeliers, a wonderful winemaker, and a bit of fun. That takes us through to Thursday. Thursday is the birthday of South African wine. 2nd of February, we'll be heading off to Kurt Constantia and talking to some really special people as we pay tribute to 2 centuries of South African winemaking. And that does it for me for this evening. See you back on Thursday. Have a great week and keep drinking great South African wine. As you've seen tonight, you don't have to pay a fortune to get some really special bottles. Goodbye.